We are live on Facebook. Welcome, everyone. My name is Eileen Minogue. I'm the Executive Director for the book Fairies. I hope that you are enjoying the stories and the authors that we've had so far. Today, we are excited to have Rosemary Wells. If you guys are enjoying what we've been doing and love reading, we can't help but not mention the fact that there are so many people who do not have access to books. It's in fact the reason why we exist. So if you do enjoy readings and you are passionate about literacy and helping people get a hand up and leveling the playing field, we hope that you will consider the Book Fairies as your charity of choice. We would not exist without our funding and our sponsors, so thank you for considering that. Today we're excited to welcome Rosemary. Rosemary is the best-selling author and illustrator of children's books, including the very popular Max and Ruby series. I know it was a staple in my house for a very long time. Rosemary's career as an author and illustrator spans more than 40 years and 130 books. That is absolutely amazing. She has won numerous awards and has given readers such unforgettable characters such as Max and Ruby, Nosy Nora, and Yoko. She has also given Mother Goose new life in 2 definitive editions published by Candlewick. Thank you so much for being here today. I can tell you that so many people were so excited that you were going to be here, and we're excited to have you. Welcome, Rosemary.
Thank you so much, Eileen. It's a pleasure to be here. Even though I'm not there, I'm here, and you're there. It's still a pleasure to be on the program, and I should remind you that I will be sending you a box of books. And my publisher, Simon & Schuster, will be sending you some Max books. And I hope Penguin will come along with some Nosy Noras. So we're very, very supportive here. Of course, you're talking to the author of Read to Your Bunny. And this is right up my alley. So thank you for asking me. And I can't wait to read to your kids.
That's awesome. Thank you. Those books will really be a huge help for us. Thank you.
Okay, should I begin?
Yes.
All right, let's go to the first page of the story. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, because it just said that I was muted. All right, that's the cover. Let's go through to the first page. This is a Max and Ruby book. And to my surprise, after I wrote this book, I was told by a very, very special librarian that it was all about something called emergent writing. I'd never heard of emergent writing, but sure enough, that's what it's about. So here we go. Bunny Cakes by Rosemary Wells. For Anne Tobias, she was my editor at the time. It was Grandma's birthday. Max made her a worm birthday cake. Mr. Ruby, we are going to make Grandma an angel surprise cake with raspberry fluff icing. Max wanted to help. Don't touch anything, Max, said Ruby. But it was too late. Ruby sent Max to the store with a list that said, now when I have a whole classroom full of kids in front of me, somebody always reads out that the list in Ruby's writing says eggs. Max wanted red-hot marshmallow squirters for his earthworm cake, so he wrote red-hot marshmallow squirters on the list, and everybody can see Max's handwriting there in red and green. The grocer could not read Max's writing. Eggs, said the grocer, and he gave Max eggs. Max brought the eggs home to Ruby. Don't bump the table, Max, said Ruby. Uh-oh, does everybody see that milk bottle? Is that going over? I'll bet it is. But it was too late. Ruby sent Max back to the store with a list that said M-I-L-K, milk. This time, Max wrote, red hot marshmallow squirters in a different way. Max hoped and hoped for his squirters, but the grocer still couldn't read Max's writing. Milk, said the grocer, and he gave Max milk. Max brought the milk home to Ruby. There's a yellow line on the floor, Max, said Ruby. You can't step over that line. But guess what? Max crossed the line anyway. Over went the flour. Ruby got out her pencil. F-L-O-U-R spells flour. This time, Max wrote red hot marshmallow squirters in the most beautiful writing he knew. Max could almost taste the marshmallow squirters. Flour, said the grocer, and he gave Max flour. When Max got home, there was a sign on the kitchen door. Does everybody see that sign of the crossed out bunny with the plaid pants? You bet Ruby made that sign. Max, the kitchen is no place for you, said Ruby. Ruby finished up her cake. Do you see Max's ears outside the window? I do. She baked it and cooled it and iced it with raspberry fluff frosting. It needs something else, Max, said Ruby. Birthday candles, silver stars, sugar hearts, buttercream roses, wrote Ruby. Meanwhile, Max had a brand new idea. He drew a picture of red-hot marshmallow squirters on Ruby's list and ran to the grocer. He could not wait. Birthday candles, silver stars, sugar hearts, buttercream roses, said the grocer. What's this? Why, it must be red-hot marshmallow squirters. Did Max get his squirters? Yes, he did. Ruby's cake looked just beautiful. She's so proud, isn't she? Max went out and put caterpillar icing on his earthworm cake. Grandma was so thrilled, she didn't know which cake to eat first. I hope you like this Max and Ruby story. I will tell you one thing before I finish, and that is a lot of people ask me, where are Max and Ruby's parents? They always want to know where those parents are. Well, I'll tell you one thing. If those parents came downstairs and were there for that whole cake making episode, none of it would have happened. The parents aren't in the stories because then the stories wouldn't be so funny. So that's the answer to that question. Now we're going to have another book. It's taking a little bit of time to put Noisy Nora, You Can Do It, Noisy Nora on the screen. And we're just waiting for that to happen. But in the meantime, that's the whole thing about Max and Ruby and the parents. That's the question that everybody asks me all the time. And what you're looking at right now is called an end paper. And that is at the beginning and the end of the book is a decoration page, 2 decoration pages. And I also do the artwork for that. I love doing artwork for my books. It is a wonderful thing. Let me tell you, boys and girls, and parents too, it is a wonderful thing to be able to do something that you love as your job every day. And that's what I am most thankful for in this world. Now, here's a new book. It's called You Can Do It, Noisy Nora, and it's based on a true story of my granddaughter, Frances. So we'll go to the first page, but first, let's turn the page if we can. First, I want you to just see this one page that we're on. Do you see all those violins and stringed instruments right there? It says, for my string septet. And what that means, the word septet is probably a new word for most of you. Sept is the Latin word for 7. So when you have a septet, how many instruments do you have? You have 7. It's true if you just have 7 voices, it's still a septet. Or 7 trumpets is a septet. Or 7 pianos, so long as it's 7 instruments. So these 7 instruments are all played by my granddaughters and my daughters. And I'll tell you who plays what. Petra, who is 8 years old, plays the viola. Bizu, who is 42 years old, plays the violin. Frances, who's 10 years old, plays the violin. Phoebe, who's also 10 years old, plays the viola. Lexi, who's 45 years old, plays the viola. And Ellie and Zoe, who are both 15 years old, play the cello. And when they all play together, it is a wonderful thing. So I like to introduce my book with my family and all their wonderful instruments. From a neighbor's window on a night in June. Nora heard a violin playing Clair de Lune. The music floated like a cloud. Soft and true. Nora wished with all her heart that she could play it too. How about the xylophone, said Father with a smile. Or the banjo, Mama added, would surely be worthwhile. Anything, yelled Sister Kate, except a screeching violin. But Nora wanted what she wanted, and she dug her heels in. Mrs. Yamamoto brought the violin. There's much to learn and practice before we can begin. First things first, she said, here's the way we hold the bow. Standing firmly on both legs, press the strings just so. Twinkle, twinkle, little star will be our starter tune, said Mrs. Yamamoto. You'll learn it very soon. Look at this week, boys and girls. Monday, twang. Tuesday, whine. Wednesday, scrape. Thursday, squeak. Friday, screech. Saturday, pluck. Sunday, shriek, was Nora's music for a week. Twinkle, twinkle, little star came squealing through the breeze. Nora, yelled Sister Kate, close your door, please. Practice hours felt like years. Everybody held their ears. Awful, squawked the cockatoo. Jack woke up and cried. Brava, said her mama, but let's play again outside. Sawing like a buzzsaw, scratching like a hen, with father for conductor, Nora tried again. And I want everybody to see something here in these pages, that Nora's mommy and daddy are very supportive, that even though she isn't playing real music yet, they want her to try and try again. And if she's annoying the rest of the family, then they bring her outside to play so that it's not so annoying. But no matter what, they are on her side and encouraging her, which is what all our mommies and daddies must do so that we grow up wanting to do our best and keep at it. Kate put on her earmuffs. Jack began to howl. The cockatoo was covered with a heavy bathroom towel. September 1st was going to be a very special day. Nora had a brand new song she wanted so to play. You can do it, said her teacher, and in a monumental burst, Nora learned it perfectly on August 31st. The special evening came at last. Not a sound was heard. No tra-la-la from Jack, no comments from the bird. Safely underneath her chin, Nora tucked her violin. Happy birthday, Mama. Across the yard it rang. Every note played true and strong, and everybody sang. I hope you've enjoyed these two stories. I certainly enjoyed drawing the pictures and writing the stories. It's not so easy to do this. A lot of people think, well, children's books are really easy to do, but they're really as hard as grown-up books. And you have to have a special ability in order to write and to draw pictures for children. And because I was, by some miracle, given that wonderful ability, I love doing it, and I've done an awful lot of books. I hope that you've enjoyed all these books, and we're going to go on to a question time here. And here's the first question: are you more like one of your book characters? Well, I don't know that I'm like one of my book characters. Maybe I'm like almost all of them. That when you're a writer, you put yourself into every character, sometimes the good ones, sometimes the bad ones or the mean ones, sometimes the happy ones, sometimes the sad ones, because these are the things that we all feel in our lives. And so I'd say I would go into every character that I write and draw. Why doesn't Max speak a lot? Okay, well, I'll tell you about Max. I had two girls, and the first one, the oldest one, who turned out to be Ruby, used to talk when she was 9 months old. She had 3-word sentences. She didn't run around a lot. She liked to be carried around, but boy, could she talk. The second one, Marguerite, who wound up being Max in the books, didn't talk at all until she was 3 years old. But boy, would she run around and climb trees and do everything. And so they were very different children. And Max is much like Marguerite in that way. He just is a little bit slow talking. But because the book tells you what he's thinking all the time, you know that he is just as smart as Ruby. And it makes for a better sounding book when you can have one character who talks and the other one who thinks, but you tell your reader exactly what Max is thinking, and it works. Which is more fun, to write a chapter book or a picture book, I guess you're saying? I love both of them. And somebody once said that a change is as good as a rest. And so when I get tired of doing artwork and pictures, I will switch over to a chapter book, and it gives me a change, and I love that. I enjoy both in their own way so much. Adults are always trying to figure out what is probably what happened to Max and Ruby's parents. Is that it? I think there's a whole website devoted to that. And I'll tell you, Max and Ruby's parents are never far away, but they're not in the stories because the stories are not about the parents. The stories are about Max and Ruby. If the parents were in the stories wouldn't be funny. Ruby wouldn't say what she says, and none of it would happen. It just is much funnier without the parents. And it's not about the parents, just like Charlie Brown is not about parents. Who gives you most inspiration to write for children? Well, I think everything that I see and everything that I remember from when I was a kid and my grandchildren, whom I love so much, all of them have little stories and they bring them home. Yoko was the story that came home with my daughter Victoria one day. She brought home a story from school where she told me that she had 3 classmates from Japan. We had a house that was located in Briarcliff, New York, and in White Plains there was a big Mitsubishi head office at the time. And so we had a lot of Japanese kids in our school in Tarrytown. And these 3 girls would bring sushi lunches to school every day that their mothers made in little bento boxes. And this was long ago. This was about 40 years ago, before there were any sushi restaurants and before anybody really knew how wonderful sushi was. And the American kids would tease the Japanese girls about eating raw fish and eating seaweed and eating all this stuff that they put in the bento boxes. And they teased them. And you know how kids are. Kids can be very mean and very narrow-minded. So this went on. And I said to Victoria, well, you know, that's really not very kind. And that shouldn't be. But she said, when the teachers, Mom, that's what the kids do. They tease them. I said, well, what do the girls from Japan say? And she said, oh, they really don't care. They just laugh in Japanese. And I laughed when I heard her say that. But you know something? There was a story there. And because I'm a writer, and I took a real story that was told to me by my daughter, I had to change it. This is the basis of my Young Writers Workshop. I take a real story and I try to tell people how to change reality. So what I did was I got rid of 2 of those little girls. I just had one, Yoko. And when you're one person instead of 3, and people are teasing you about what your mother gives you to eat for school lunch, it feels very different because you don't have anybody to laugh in Japanese with. So this is how I find my stories. Everything I read and everything that I encounter has the possibility of a story. It's more about finding than it is about inventing. And that's the way it is for most authors. Where did I get the ideas for the cartoons? I don't have anything to do with the cartoons. The cartoons are made by a studio in Canada, Nelvana Studios. They bought the rights to the Max and Ruby books, and they do all the animation and their stories and everything that goes into that. In order to put on a television program like Max and Ruby, which has gone for years, you have to have about 100 people, and I can't do that. So they do what they do, and I enjoy knowing that it's on television. It's a wholesome kind of TV for kids. When you draw your illustrations, what medium do you use? There's all kinds of mediums. Sometimes I use pastels. Mostly I use watercolor, colored inks, all kinds of different pens that you can buy now. I have just a huge studio full of just practically everything you can find in the art store. Have you illustrated for other authors? If so, what they are? No, I really have not. I am a person who writes my own stories, and except for the Mother Goose, I don't really illustrate for other authors because I have enough stories myself. Who is your favorite character to write? Well, I have a lot of favorite characters. I love my Sophie character. I love Max and Ruby and Yoko. I have lots and lots of favorites. Do you prefer writing or drawing, or I can't get the ends of these messages. It ends with TW. Do I prefer writing or drawing? No, I love to do them both. Drawing is very hard. It is always difficult. Writing is very easy, but I do love doing both.